So, welcome to the Bitcoin Aggregated podcast. We're going to try and do a monthly podcast talking about all things Bitcoin and putting them into a RSS feed that you can sort of follow along with. So, to kick it off, we've got a bunch of articles and videos and sort of sound bites that have been in the news just recently. The one I really wanted to kick off with, I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, is the Hillary Clinton speech that she did from, I think it was like yesterday or the day before, but I thought it was hilarious. And I think it'll be a good talking point for all of us. So let me know if you can hear it on your end.
And then one more area that I hope nation states start paying greater attention to is the rise of cryptocurrency. Because what looks like a very interesting and somewhat exotic effort to literally mine new coins in order to trade with them has the potential for undermining currencies, for undermining the role of the dollar as the reserve currency, for destabilizing nations, perhaps starting with small ones, but going much larger. So when we think about this new environment in which we find ourselves that we've been discussing for the last some minutes, we can't just think about nation state.
So basically she's said that the rise of Bitcoin / cryptocurrency is, like she says in this headline here, is basically going to undermine the whole economy. So like the legacy economy, she sees that as being a big factor in inflation and basically all the negatives that come along with the legacy financial system. And she's getting flamed on Twitter. It's hilarious. It's like everyone telling her how retarded she is and rah 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 rah. But there's probably like some aspects to what she's saying that may be relevant. I'm not too sure. Like I couldn't put myself in her shoes and figure out what she's actually trying to say from like that sort of perspective. I'm assuming there's someone paying her off to talk about that. Like why else would she be coming out on like such a big forum and promoting like fiat currency and demonizing cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin. But I thought I'd open that up and like, what do you guys think about that? Like, and do you think there's some merit into what she's talking about?
Well, I reckon, look, with everything, when people start demonizing whether it be the new thing that's happening or something that potentially might take over what's in place, it's because it's eating into their own piggy bank, for lack of a better term. So a lot of people that are heavily reliant on the fiat, say, legacy sort of financial system, they'd be shitting themselves if they haven't already taken in and like started investing and trading or just looking into cryptocurrencies and BTC in general.
Yeah.
It's because they're thinking, okay, that's eating away at what potentially my earnings are going to be and what they have been over the last how many decades. So of course they're going to come out and trash. They're going to trash. So therefore, in the years to come, their money doesn't start slowly dwindling away. That's the way I see it. And I've experienced this through people that I've met. So I'll give you one example, which was, it's stuck with me. It is absolutely stuck with me. And you guys know that I've got my, I'm a personal trainer, I've got my own gym and everything. So where I've got my gym, it's a wire factory. They make and shape all things wire. And, you know, on barbells, if you're aware, there's things called spring collars. They're made out of wire and that holds the weights on the end of the barbell. They've been around forever, yeah, for the last however many years, right? But only in recent years, in the last probably 5 years, these new collars have come out. They're plastic and they're magnetic and they clip on and they're way better than the wire ones. Anyway, so I bought some of them, took them to the studio, and the owner of the factory, the wire factory, I train him. He comes up and he goes, "What are you doing with them?" Like, oh, the new collars, they're way better than the old wire ones. He goes, no, mate, you got to keep with the wire ones. You got to support the wire industry. I'm like, what? But they're crap. These are way better. And he goes, no, but like I make wire, like, you know, and I went, and that's where the penny dropped. I'm like, holy shit. He didn't care whether something was better or not. What he cared was what was going to bring him money.
Yeah.
And what might make his business obsolete. So that's where I'm going with this. It's the same sort of thing. Exact same sort of concept.
Totally.
You're absolutely right. And we see this over the last maybe 5 or 6 years with banks in Australia, for example. They all shit on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, same as Visa and MasterCard and all those big boys, because they're traditionally stuck into the fiat currency side of things, and their real business is debt and people paying off debt. With cryptocurrency, you don't have any of that. And now slowly over time, they've realized they can actually make some level of money off it, not just debt, but just from a crypto perspective. And they've now slowly come into the fold and are re-energizing their business so they can actually target crypto side of things. So we'll see that more and more as the coming years go along. But PayPal literally yesterday announced that they can accept Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum as payment methods. So anything that uses PayPal can now use crypto. Of course, do you really want to link your own wallet up to that as well? Because it's obviously all tracked and so forth. But the option's there anyway. So it's quite an interesting dynamic.
It's just, and I think that ties into what I just said as well, Tony, where these organizations, these companies have realized, well, we got to get along with this because this is the future. If we don't, they're going to get left behind.
Yeah, be in it or leave it, I guess.
A Kodak moment. Yeah, well, I think that's super important. I think the Commonwealth Bank sort of implementing that is huge, like for a lot of people in Australia to be able to see.
Massive.
Like,
oh yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't have a Commonwealth account. I know you do, Louis. Like, has it popped up in your app yet that you can actually buy Bitcoin with your?
Not that I've seen. Nothing's popped up. No. Nothing's popped up. I don't open it up every day or anything, but like, probably if I went into the settings, it probably would be there.
Maybe.
Let me just check. I can check now, actually.
Well, the other thing with that is like so many companies have just gone, yeah, we're implementing Bitcoin now, and then just nothing happens. It's just like to make this stock go up. So it could be one of those.
And it's also one of those things, they use some sort of a third-party payment gateway, PayPal, Visa, whatever it may be, and they'll take some percentage off. And if you want to pay crypto, and obviously crypto to crypto, sure, you pay some level of gas fee or some processing fee. But not only do you pay the processing fee at that level, you also pay the PayPal equivalent transaction fee, right? Whatever that small percentage of a given coin is. Yeah. So you're getting it twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Ideally, you just pay someone direct without that middleman. And I think convenience, to be honest, will trump anything, as it always does, through whatever industry, throughout whatever timeframes or whatever happens, really.
Yeah.
And I think people will use it more, but will realize that eventually that they can do things a little bit better, a little bit more cumbersome, of course, but there's better ways around it.
Yeah, it always comes back to education as well. But yeah,
they've been around for 100, 150 odd years, and also based on the European model from a banking sector perspective. You know, for them, they don't really care about crypto or the end users for that matter. It's all about making money. So if they can inject themselves in the pipeline, awesome for them. That's, you know, their business model. But also their business is obviously to make money. So they're not processing crypto, you know, out of the goodness of their hearts. They want their slice. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, it's about getting your slice. That's what it is.
Same as PayPal, right? Like PayPal did the same thing like a year or two ago in the States only, but it's like, cool, I can get a token that says Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, but you don't actually own that. Like, so many people are like buying it. It's like, but you literally couldn't transfer it out of PayPal. It was just sitting in the PayPal wallet. So it's like, great.
And we actually see this sort of model in Australia for the last maybe 80 or so years. Typically when someone gets paid, you know, you work for a company and whatever you may get paid on the Wednesday. Typically your company that you work for transfers the money to a bank on the Sunday. The bank invests whatever money for all the staff members, all the wages for a couple of days. And then Wednesday morning, they transfer whatever as an individual, you're meant to get paid, and they invest that money into stocks. They take the cream off the top, whatever their returns on their stocks, and you get your pay. So they've done this shit for years, right? And that's essentially how they can double dip, because obviously they pay for all the accounting fees, transactions, as in your company, and then they make money off it again.
Yeah,
and they'll do exactly the same with crypto. That's really the model.
Yeah,
well, that's the model for everything. I mean, superannuation funds, any funds you can fucking think of. It's the same shit. Exactly the same shit. We'll look after your money and we'll use it to better us. And then we'll give you a very small percentage of it back just to keep you happy, and we'll keep what we've done with it.
Yeah, we'll reinvest it in the back end. And, if you rock up to a bank, hey, I need 100,000 of my dollars, of my money, in denominations right now, they can't give it to you, right? Because they just simply don't have it.
Yeah. That's not because they're investing. Oh, it is they're investing, but they're doing something called fractional lending. So it means that for every dollar they have to keep 10 cents, and then the other 90 cents they can loan out to 5 people 5 times. And so they get that way as well.
They can loan out,
AKA a Ponzi scheme. Yeah.
Well, this is funny you should mention, because in any Western culture, you create a Ponzi scheme, you go to fucking jail, right? The difference is these days the banking system is a Ponzi scheme. Something happens, the government bails them out. No one goes to jail. A few CEOs might step over or step down and go do some other shit. No one's in jail here. That's a little bit ludicrous, to be honest. And what you mentioned, Don, absolutely true. The other way to think about it is a bank can lend out 10 times more than what they currently have. So you give them $1, they can lend out $10, right? Instead of 10% 90, just think of it 10 times, right? And that's insane. They're giving out more than actually what they have, more that's in the reserve, which is a little bit crazy.
Potentially, because they could also be getting assets against that worth 10 times the amount that the dollar was worth.
It breeds inflation. That's all it does.
Yeah.
It is a machine directed at breeding inflation and nothing else, and devaluing.
It's a really good crime syndicate, though. They've really pulled it off.
Put it together really well. Jekyll Island was amazing.
Yeah, Jekyll Island, exactly.
And it's no different from Creature from Jekyll Island. Did you mention?
Yeah.
It's a good book. But it's good protection money, right? The mafia, all these people, the bikers, they do all this sort of stuff. Banks essentially call it as insurance. It's protection money, right? Up until the point where someone fucks up, inflation hits the roof, crashes, and everyone gets shot in the head, apart from the banks.
No, we're getting there. We're living it now, man. Inflation's it's great.
So to bring it back, this guy, Jack Dorsey.
Can we go back to the original point? Because I think what she was actually talking about was much more than personal level stuff.
Okay, yeah, sure. Before we get onto Dorsey,
So when she was talking,
by the way.
So I had a quick listen to the clip in the background.
Oh, nice.
And it sounds like what she's saying, well, what she's trying to say, let's say, is that there's the current system, and with that, there's a whole heap of mechanisms they use to try and manage inflation and other things, and that's something to be looked at with crypto, because at the minute there's no tools to stop hyperinflation with a coin if it was being bombarded into a smaller country, is what she started with. So I don't know enough about Bitcoin to say if there are tools or not, but I think that's what she was trying to get at, is there's no measures in place to try and limit the lowest level of people in a country from being fucked.
So with that, the mechanism in place is a set limit of 21 million Bitcoin that'll ever be in existence. So you can't possibly have inflation with that, let alone hyperinflation. So it is the solution to hyperinflation.
So if someone had 100 coins only, let's say, and that used to be able to buy you enough food for a year.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Now the price of food goes up for whatever reason. You can't afford to eat food for more than a week. What measures are in place to try and minimize that effect before it gets to that effect?
Hey, priced in fiat or priced in sats or priced in Bitcoin? Like what are you pricing?
Let's say coins.
Good point.
Just say coins. The 100 coins you've got 100 coins, whatever it is.
So
whether it's measured in fiat, whether it's measured in in Bitcoins, whether it's measured in whatever.
So if you're measuring it in Satoshis, which is like the lowest denomination of a Bitcoin, that is a thing for the interim. Case in point, El Salvador, where you have people who have got like X amount of sats that they have as an income. Today it's worth this, tomorrow it's worth more, tomorrow it's like the next day it's worth less. That is a problem at the moment, and I think that's something that's being addressed. But I think it depends on your time preference. So your time preference, if you're looking at something like that, is very low. So it's like, you know, next day to the next day, which is most people live like that, which is probably not a good thing. But if you have a long time preference, that goes away very, like if you think of it like a boat, it's like a boat sort of in the ocean, sort of moving back and forth. If it's a big boat, or the bigger the boat gets, the less you sort of go up and down. So it's the same as the currency sort of going up and down, the same for Bitcoin sort of thing. So I think like once we get to a point where it is like the world reserve currency, you're not going to see issues like that popping up anymore, and you're not going to have these massive swings, because it will be the reserve. So it'll be stable. So it will be the stable coin. So at the moment you have these things called stable coins like Tether, True USD, etc. It's like an Australian one as well, which are quote unquote stable coins because they're pegged to whatever fiat currency there is. But I think once it gets to a point where it kind of flips, where it's like, well, that's not stable, it's fucking out of control, you'll have sats as the default for everyone. We're probably going to take a little bit of time to get there, but once it gets there, look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's going to be even quicker than I think, but I'm thinking sort of 10 years out. Maybe it's next few years, depending on how quick hyperinflation happens.
Is there any way to get this video so we can all listen to it at the same time?
I thought so. That's what I was
in
doing
your
before.
analogy, though, I suppose what I'm saying is if the water level rises, even though it's not going up and down, the boat, you can't afford anything because the water level's too high now. Everything you want's not accessible to you.
To who?
To people.
Which people?
All people.
But all people can't afford
There might
everything
be
at the moment.
No, but there might be a handful that have everything 1%ers, as they are now.
Yeah.
And everyone else below can't get standardized.
Well, that's how it is now, right?
Cost of living things. Oh, well, here at least the government's attempting, let's say, to make necessities.
But we're in the top 1%
available.
of the 1% in the world, right? In Australia. So we're very, very lucky. So I'm talking about a global currency, not just Australia. So we're very lucky in Australia we have been historically.
Well,
we're not lucky at the moment. It's probably the worst country in the world at the moment. But historically, we've been very lucky here to have a stable enough currency and be able, and like, you know, a loaf of bread is the same today as it's going to be tomorrow, relatively. That's not the same all over the world. It's only here and a handful of countries. Some places are fucked, and they've been fucked for a long time.
Well, maybe bread, yeah, that's a fine example because that's done here. But a lot of other things are not that. Many things, petrol, not stable at all.
Yeah, true. That's manipulated for sure. Well, and that goes back to like, how do you authenticate the price? So if you look at like how the markets work with BTC, because it's a 24/7 market that is very hard to manipulate because it's so quick, and literally like the last price you're looking at is pretty much the last price that some nuff decided to give up the BTC for fiat. But for oil, like it's anyone's guess. Like it's manipulated, and like precious metals, silver in particular, it's been manipulated for years.
There's a bunch of factors about the silver side of things, right?
Yeah. So I mean,
even things like diamonds, right? Useless, sort of a thing. Useless. But now highly prized. You know what I mean? It's Just it's been
The De
nuts, really.
Beers mining scam. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
exactly
for
right.
them.
Yeah. So I think once everyone sort of gets out of that mindset of it being, I suppose, like, price has been abstracted away from you. So it's like this other thing that's not part of you and how you live. It's like the stock market and all these weird things that you aren't really in tune with. Once it's actually like, oh, it's a currency that, or a currency and an asset that I can control 100%, that's tradable 24/7, and the price is clear regardless of where I am in the world, it's going to change everything.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's going to be uniform regardless if you're in Ecuador or fucking Madagascar or Australia, right? One is one anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah,
One BTC
yeah.
is one BTC. Or one
Maybe
sat's
I'm
one sat.
inferring incorrectly what she's saying, but I think she's talking about it as a company level, as in, sorry, a country level, not a global level.
I think she was talking about the States, and I'm speculating, but I think,
Well, because she specifically says
she's
it'd,
getting paid off to say
help
that.
manipulate. No, because she specifically said it could heavily affect smaller countries. So she was taking it to a country level, not a global
Yeah.
level. And that's where she's, well, no, like
Does she
she's trying to
elaborate on
compare it.
the
Like
on
what she did
how it would
with
affect
the Haitians.
smaller country levels?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
she was
no.
saying so it could be manipulated to affect the smaller country, potentially to detrimental reasons, because there
It's
are
not.
no safeguards, let's call it, or mechanisms in place to try and
But there
keep it
is.
stable.
But that's what it is.
So,
So
what
once,
are they then?
So once you have
Clearly, one line.
a distributed network where you have, it's fair, it's fairness.
Life's
Full
not
stop.
fair.
But yeah, and life lies as well. The Bitcoin network does not lie,
So
and it's fair.
What would stop a
regardless.
country that's massive like China destroying another country then?
Destroying another country? What do you mean?
Yeah,
With a currency?
Bitcoin hyperinflation within that country by limiting resources and things
They've
like
done
that.
that.
And then
So they did that recently. So they tried to. They've done. So if you look back at the Bitcoin obituaries, which are hilarious because every time there's an obituary, the price goes up. Like it's it's awesome. But if you look back, like they've tried to ban it again and again and again, and recently they banned the mining of it. So what happened? The hash rate went down for a week. They moved all their miners overseas, and it's back up to beyond where it was. So it didn't stop. And the interesting thing with that is, and it's a really important point that I think a lot of people miss, is that price is irrelevant, absolutely irrelevant. So whether it's $60 or $60,000 US doesn't matter because those currencies are dead, right? It's literally a dead system. What matters is hash power. So how much hash power has this cryptocurrency got, and how much power in the network is there? That's key, and that hasn't stopped ever. So regardless of it going up and down like it has been in price and like purchasing power, whatever, the hash power has never stopped. So the actual power of the network has never stopped.
So, and also, can I add, like, with something what you said before, Don, about how Hillary was talking about it could affect smaller countries, and then we were going on about what was it, the pricing and hyperinflation and all that sort of stuff. So the only reason why Bitcoin has that kind of thorn in its side is because at the moment it's kind of valued towards what fiat is. So one BTC is, say, 60K, right? If it wasn't valued against a fiat currency, there wouldn't be that problem because that would be the currency. It's Satoshi's. The only reason why it potentially has that problem is because it is valued against a fiat. So again, here the problem is not the cryptocurrency; it's the fiat.
Actually,
you're
100% right, Louis. Like so,
So how do you buy a goat? How do you buy a goat in a poor country or a developing country?
So my friends
Bitcoin has a value.
So my friends in El Salvador at the moment, and so cool. I got to buy a t-shirt like over Twitter, like with sats, which was sick. Like you can't do that with the legacy currency, but he's over there and he's seeing like all these changes that happen. But what's happened is people already have started pricing things in sats. So
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Instead of
Instead
pricing
of
them,
fiat, it will be stats. Yeah,
it's all
exactly right.
sats, and it's happened
Yeah.
organically with like old people as well. He said so it's like
That's how it
oldies
works.
with
That's
like
who it would go to first, because
with,
they're the
like,
ones that were used to and
phones.
would have been raised on bartering.
Yep.
They would have
Yep.
been raised on that stuff. They wouldn't have
Yeah.
relied on how much money we had growing up. They would have relied on, okay, what resources do I have?
Yeah.
What resources can I trade with my neighbor to get what we need? And the
Exactly.
same will go with stats. That is exactly how it would work.
Exactly.
So that's why I go back to that. I go
Bartering's
back
a
to that
key
point.
human-
It's the fiat currency that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and bartering's been a key human thing for thousands of years, right? The concept of fiat currency, something gold, silver coins in my hand, is just a relative new thing, a couple of thousand years old, right? But bartering, fuckloads longer than that. It's just
and paper money even more. Paper money was just a contract to begin with.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that contract could always be handed in to get the value of what the goods were, whether it be gold, silver, or precious metal. Now, what's the paper worth? Nothing. You can wipe your fucking ass with
Yeah,
it.
it's good toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly. You can't trade it in for anything precious.
Yeah, that's right. No, but I thought that was really fascinating. So like that point, Don, like specifically now, which I thought was cool, like it's happened so rapidly, with old people as well who are not natives to the internet and stuff, and they just have like, I don't know, like a dress shop or something. I've got this Android phone, boom, like this is what I price stuff in now, Satoshis. It's happened. It's happened like within the space of a year. It's crazy.
That's fine, but I'm still to the same point. If you've still got 100 sats only, and things go so high that 100 sats doesn't buy you anything anymore, whether it's fiat, whether it's sats,
but what
mechanisms are in place?
But like, say, so say you're buying stuff, so you're selling stuff for sats, and then the shop next door is selling stuff for sats as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's
right.
sats. The whole country's sats.
Yeah.
Nothing but sats in the country.
Yep.
What mechanisms are in place to stop that country either being flooded or exporting all of its sats out, buying goods outside, and there's no sats coming in, so that they can get goods to survive?
So for them specifically, they've got
for that country, that isolated island.
Yep.
What's going to help them? What measures, what mechanisms can their government or people in charge implement to get more sats back into the economy?
Perfect.
Or make the sats there worth more so they can buy an apple to eat and not starve to death?
So good.
Implement mining.
Yeah. So perfect question. So like what they've done, they've actually got, my friend's gone to visit today, I think. They've got a volcano, and they're literally mining BTC off the volcano and giving it out to the whole country. So literally, since they've started doing that, they've got enough to build 20 schools. So that's within 6 months. No, 3 months. 3 months, they've mined enough.
Just with using the thermal energy.
It's nuts.
Perfect. That's
and
good.
as you said before, there's a limited number of Bitcoins. When mining's no longer available,
we'll all be dead. So it's the last Bitcoin is 2140 roundabout. So
the amount of Bitcoins you can mine reduces every year.
No.
Yeah? How many they can do or not?
Around every 4 years.
Isn't there a half-life or something or other?
Yeah, halvening's every 4 years.
Halvening, yeah.
Yep. So 40 years from now, it's halved 10 times.
Yep.
That mechanism's is less effective in helping that country now.
So it actually
keep its economy going.
So
that's where another important thing would be education. So it's educating the people that are using these sats and using these different ways of transferring.
Above people. You're talking government, you're talking businesses.
So
they're the biggest spenders and the biggest purchasers of things.
What are governments and businesses made up of, Don? People?
The people work in them, they don't direct where it goes.
But they're people, right? So it's not above people. It's people is what everything is. Society is made up of people.
A business doesn't have to bend to the people within its ethics and morals that are not at the top of it deciding what the business's ethics and morals are. The people play up, they get fired. someone else gets employed. So what's stopping businesses, or what's educating businesses and governments to work in those ways?
So with the Bitcoin network, it's pretty cool. So by the time, like 40 years time, say for example, the incentive for mining flips to actually running a node. So when you run a full node, you can authenticate. Oh, we lost Tony over here. You can authenticate transactions, and now with the Lightning Network in particular, you actually become like, so say you and Louis wanted to do a transaction now. I can be the conduit for that transaction, and I actually take a fee for that. So you could replace me with the government, replace me with whoever, and that goes kind of progressively up until 2140. After that, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen after 2140. It's going to be a different world.
Yeah, it'll be, well, things
Totally.
will just have, yeah, it will be totally different.
But
yeah, that's two ways of making Satoshis relatively easy, really.
it's
that
pretty
can't
exciting.
be affected.
Yeah, I think it's going
So
to be real.
what
really,
happens to it? Yeah, what happens to a country then that can't keep up the same rate as other countries at mining Satoshis?
Well, if you want to go down that route, I reckon the nation.
Well, that's what she's saying. I think that's what she's trying to get at. Is that
Yeah. Well,
smaller countries can be destabilized because they don't have the measures in place to counteract something like that.
Yeah, totally what she's saying. Like, and regardless of what she's done to
whether
the
I
Haitian
like
people
her or
and
not,
stuff. Yeah.
Whatever, like different story. I'm just trying to try and pretend to understand her point.
Trying to unpack it. Yeah, no, I like it. No, I think going down that route as to nation states. Honestly, I reckon she's talking about that because the nation state's going to disappear. I think it's a silly concept to begin with, and it's only a very recent thing we've actually had that.
I wouldn't say that.
I think
there's always been groups. There's always been a group identities throughout
group identities.
Yeah,
for fine. I think that's cool.
Yeah, but people
volunteer into it. Yes.
Country because of a place of birth, and they identify with that group. So I'm not a psychologist, but you know,
there's a fantastic book called The Sovereign Individual. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. And it was written in the 90s. Peter Thiel has actually written the foreword to it, for a re-release of it, sort of thing. But it hammers out literally everything we've gone through for the last 20 years, including lockdowns and everything, and how crazy the laws are getting, specifically because of the death of the nation state and where that's headed. And it's so prophetic, and I can see that into the future. Like, why do we need these silly papers to say where you're going and all that? I mean, this is kind of getting off topic, I suppose, but you can see that being sort of bred into the Bitcoin infrastructure, particularly. It's not off topic at all. So if you look at like what Microsoft are doing at the moment, so they're actually building out DIDs, so decentralized IDs, and they're using the Bitcoin blockchain specifically because of its longevity and its security. But what that'll mean is that you can sort of plug it into whatever you want, but you have ownership over it, as opposed to a third party like a nation state sort of thing. So I think that's where we're headed, and I think she's not missing the point. She's going after that because she doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm. That's why I think most people, you either don't understand it fully, or it threatens something that you hold very dear.
Yep.
And that's why you start to trash.
Yep.
Or start to try and dig a hole for it.
I wouldn't even say she was doing that though, listening to the clip.
I want to listen to this clip. Yeah, I'd like to listen to the clip.
Like, I could infer that with my own prejudice on it, that's what she was saying. But if I was trying to be very objective, I'd say she's purely saying the current system we have has mechanisms. The other one at the minute doesn't have the same mechanisms, or she doesn't understand the mechanisms, or there's not an international there's not an international understanding of the mechanisms and how they interconnect with one another like they do all the other economies around the world. and that's something that needs to be looked at and potentially addressed. That's the nicest way I can put it without putting any of my like
emotions
you know,
into it.
out to
Yeah,
get people and you know, killery and all that sort of stuff.
You know what I think it also might be as well? Being, you know, Hillary and, you know, the Clinton family coming from places of power is these kind of people are used to
disconnect.
having, they're used to having power and being able to control things.
Yeah.
This can't be controlled. Not
Yeah.
in the same way, not even remotely in the same way where fiat currency can be controlled and manipulated. Cryptocurrency, in essence, in its roots, it should not be able to be controlled. You know, the simple name of crypto and comes from cryptography. So I think that's a lot of that has to do with it as well, is that it's the control factor, I believe. You know, I want to watch the clip, and I'm going to watch it, but like without listening to it, just from everything what you've been said, Don, from what Kieran has said, and just
I'm trying to stay away from what her motives are because I'll never know what they are. I can only assume.
Yeah, that's true. We can only assume. That's true.
I think it's a good jump off topic. Well, for next sesh, let's figure out how to actually watch videos together, I suppose. But let's should we switch topics? So the next one I had.
Can we just before I just want to throw an idea out there just for us. You were talking potentially about how borders would disappear, and whatnot. I look at it from a point of view of at the minute in most Western societies, farming versus non-farming. So farming in Western countries is pretty fucked. You've got average ages of farmers late 60s, most Western countries around the world.
Yep.
It's not appealing to people. You know, kids are leaving, going to the cities and whatever. So that's that whole, we can go where we want, so we will. But there's potentially a big hole being
that's interesting.
Behind.
Yeah.
So if borders didn't matter, would you end up with something similar? Maybe not in farming, but where whole areas of the world are deserted because it's not appealing to be there for some reason.
Well, we have that already. That's now, right?
Well,
most of the world's
other than cold places, let's say.
No, like go to any country and drive for an hour in any direction, and then there's no one there, right?
Farming land normally, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that's interesting. Yeah. Oh, that might be maybe a problem for the future. Who knows? That's an interesting.
Well, it won't be when there's no food and you start starving.
Well, actually,
there'll be food. There will be food. There will be food. There will always be food.
Failing that, everyone gets some guns. It will be fine.
Because it's interesting. Like if you look at America, even like with their farming, so much of their farming's corn and soy, purely because it's
soy
profitable.
What they call it, they no, the government incentivized that.
Yeah,
I forgot what it's called. It's subsidized.
Subsidized, yeah.
And that was purely from after the World War II or whatever, as a means of feeding the masses and whatever.
Well, actually, so you could look at like
since the 90s, right?
You could look at like the not that I'm a huge fan, but the Zeitgeist
movies.
Like well, the Zeitgeist, the first one was cool. The second one was weird, and the third one was even weirder. But part of it, he talks about like vertical farms and like
there's some of that going on with hydroponics in some places. There was one Singapore or Hong Kong where it's a 24-hour vertical farm. But that was mainly for lettuce and that, because that's the best things under hydroponics. That's like a 30-day seed to harvest cycle or something like that.
New York's got a lot of that going on their rooftops as well. So a lot of New York rooftops are actually growing farms. They're called city farms. I watched a thing on it a couple of months back. And that's becoming a huge thing.
What's the driver for it?
So just freshness of produce. So the way things should have always...
someone pushing it? I suppose what I'm saying is, anyone pushing? Is it like there a government initiative to try and get people interested in it, or is it just naturally evolving?
I think it started off where people just did it on their own, out of need, out of necessity, because they didn't want to be waiting on things to coming in from interstate. And then I think government, I not 100%, from what I remember, I think government did start subsidizing to try and encourage it a lot more within New York, because they saw that it was actually a thing that was working and it was helping communities, because there was the wait time of food and and the freshness, and it was all, locally grown, which is really in essence how things should be done anyway, really.
Yeah,
Right.
100%.
Yeah, because just even in America, the average age is 57 for a farmer. It's getting up there. It's crazy.
That is crazy. Good. Yeah, that's something I never thought of. But yeah,
Should see Japan.
yeah. Well, their food's the
Jesus.
best though. How is their food so good?
67.
That's crazy.
You know why? Because Japan only sells in their supermarkets
All the Japanese.
Yeah,
food
that's what I
in
mean.
season.
Yeah, but like,
Yeah.
if they're all
only go
like,
by the season.
crazy.
They only go by seasonal food. So you won't, unlike here in Australia, you won't be able to go, like, you can go to Coles and get a Coles tomato any time of the year.
Yeah,
It's tasteless.
tastes
It
like
looks like a
rubbish.
tomato.
Yeah,
It smells like a tomato, but it tastes like nothing.
yeah,
But it's a
Void of
tomato.
any nutrients.
yeah.
Whereas you go to Japan, you only get tomatoes when you can get tomatoes, and them tomatoes will taste amazing.
Yeah,
They'll be
It's all
juicy,
like a tomato.
flavoursome.
so maybe that's
Mhm.
that's the answer. Like once the no borders sort of comes into fruition, you'll sort of see more of that, some more localized stuff. I don't know. Who knows? It's interesting. All right. So should we kick on? So the
Yeah, kick on.
next one I had was this tweet I thought was pretty cool, which I hadn't thought of before at all. So like the concept of KYC and non KYC, Bitcoin specifically or crypto, whatever. But there's no such thing as non KYC Bitcoin.
So what
and
is KYC? Explain it to the layman.
So KYC is know your customer. So basically for any institution, bank or exchange, wallet, etc. You're supposed, for whatever country it's like registered in, you're supposed to keep documents based on your users. So like the end user. So for you Tony, you need to have all your details, your date of birth, everything you've ever done, logged, every transaction logged into this database, and then given up to ATO, whoever.
So the idea is to verify an individual person via whatever mechanism, passport numbers, date of birth, license numbers, whatever, from a banking perspective, to verify that this person is who they say they are, because they've got all this government documentation. Okay, we'll create them a bank account, link those sort of two entities together.
Yeah, they take it one step higher. It's basically their mechanism for fraud protection. You are who you say you are. You're going to buy what you said you're going to buy with the money. You earn X amount of money, so we know we have the potential to get the money back through the loan. That's basically it in a basic nutshell.
Yep. Yeah. And having to comply with that. So there's like, say, CoinJar, for example, has to comply with all that sort of shit. And then, spin up their own ledgers based on that. They go to ATO, and there's Coinbase do the same thing with the IRS in the States. What I like about this tweet is he's saying there's no such thing as non-KYC Bitcoin, or KYC and non-KYC Bitcoin, meaning it's just Bitcoin. I never thought of that before, but he's right. He's 100% right. It doesn't matter about the individual. That BTC still exists and it's still moving through the network, irregardless of what's happening to that individual. And I thought that was such a interesting point that had a massive thread behind it with people yelling at him basically on Twitter about it. But I thought it was so cool. But anyway, I thought that might be an interesting topic to jump off.
I read that tweet in a whole different way. I didn't read it in the way that you just described it.
And I'll bring it back up.
I read it as there's no such thing as KYC Bitcoin, meaning an anonymous way to buy Bitcoin. There is no anonymous way of buying Gitcoin that you, as an individual, that you will always be tracked. That's how I read that tweet.
Yeah.
No,
And there's
so-
always some level of identification, regardless if it's just like a wallet address or something. There's always some sort of unique identifier, even from a transactional perspective.
but,
Right? Something goes to some other thing.
Correct.
His-
Point A to point B.
but his point
Yeah.
is the network doesn't care about your KYC. It's like he's
No,
flipped
it
the whole-
doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah,
like
yeah.
it doesn't give a shit. It's like you can be on the moon, you can be in Australia, you can be wherever. The network doesn't care. It's
Right,
non
but it's not-
KYC.
But yeah, right. But it's also not the protection that we're looking for, right? The protection is end to end, right? The transaction should in the middle. It's like encryption, right? Me to talk to this endpoint, the crypto in the middle. Yeah, of course, I don't want anyone else to fucking see it, but it should be just for the intended recipients, right? Like no one else in the middle. So the transactions, of course,
End to end,
something
yeah.
needs to be logged.
Yeah,
audited.
yeah.
It has to be processed, right? Me to you sort of thing has to be worked out. And hence, that's the reason why Monero is so attractive,
Yeah.
because point A to point B, or point A to who knows, right? And the network, again, doesn't care. And that's sort of really the idea, right? If
Well,
you
yeah,
want anonymous
totally,
then
like,
that's the way.
Zero knowledge proofs is super exciting, and I love that whole concept, and I think it's been really built out well. But what he's saying in this is something that, like, I think a lot of people would sort of fight back against, because it's about the individual. So everyone's sort of thinking about themselves in terms of the network. But he's saying that the network doesn't give a shit about you. Bitcoin doesn't care about you. It's just going to keep going on and on, regardless of whether you've done KYC or not. And I thought that was really fascinating as a concept.
Absolutely.
There's probably some areas in that which definitely could have some conversation around. Would be, well, let's say, what stops terrorist funding? Do you want to stop terrorist funding? Things like that. That's the most
Has
extreme thing I can think of.
Has there anything that's ever been able to stop terrorist funding?
And how do you define?
Yeah, well,
terrorist funding?
here in Australia, there was a big thing with Westpac where there was supposed funding going on with some accounts to terrorists or whatever. So there was a massive overhaul of the system to stop that.
And then again, it's who's defining the terrorists.
Yeah.
That's the other
that's
thing.
the
too.
thing. Of course. But just saying that's a mechanism that KYC has.
Totally. I think
Yeah.
that's what I found fascinating about that tweet, and it's so thought provoking, is the network doesn't care. It's like, all right, terrorists, non-terrorists, whatever, KYC, non-KYC, it's still going ahead regardless. And the cool thing, the thought experiment, is
Kind of like code is law sort of thing.
code is law 100%. And so like
Yep.
say that KYC uncovers some nefarious thing, which is like, point nothing of a percent for the network. And it's like, these criminals, we need to get them. Fine, you got them. It takes that BTC out of the network entirely, and it makes the value of everything else go up because of scarcity. So like it's equivalent to like when people lose
Silk Road.
Silk Road, or people lose the BTC in a boating accident, or they die and forget to leave their private keys to someone. They're essentially gifting it to the whole world. So I think that's
pretty much
what he's talking
They
about.
are.
And
Yeah.
like, but he's taking it a step
Are they
further.
gifting it to the? Are they gifting it to the world, or are they gifting it to inflation? In the world?
Holders. Nah, they're giving it to BTC holders.
Yeah,
No, but if it's out of circulation, supply and demand, you basically inflated the value of what's remaining.
well, you're basically, you're increasing the value of what's remaining.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that inflation necessarily.
Well,
either
that's
would
what
I.
inflation is.
Well, depends how you define it, I
No.
suppose, and that's open to interpretation.
Well,
Like,
probably the
I listened to a
opposite,
whole podcast on it yesterday with all these different perspectives of what inflation actually means.
So you're saying if I've got $1 million, just say $1 million worth of Bitcoin, whatever $1 million, just say I've got 10 Bitcoin, 10.0 Bitcoins, I die to leave anyone my private keys. What's the process for, I guess, the network to, I wouldn't say subpoena, but
No, that is gone.
Yes,
It's gone. It's
They're
gone.
gone.
It's
Doesn't
gone because
exist anymore.
that Bitcoin will never be able to be circulated.
Yeah, so there's no way for the Bitcoin network to say, well, this Bitcoin address or miner address, whatever it may be, wallet address, to sort of be absolved from me and just be put back into the whole pool. It's just essentially,
so
it's just
correct
like
me if I'm
burned,
wrong,
essentially.
Kieran, but I
Burned.
think
Yep.
it doesn't get burned. It doesn't. No, well, not really, does it? It's just
doesn't-
more.
Equivalent
It's
to burning.
It's
So
can't be
I
used
mean,
again.
well, I
it
mean,
is equivalent to it, but is it? Correct me if I'm wrong, Kieran. Is it like, so the Bitcoin it vanishes because it's never that Bitcoin will never be circulated in the system. And what gives one of the big things that gives BTC its value is what is circulating at the moment.
Yep.
And yeah, is that right?
100%. So if you look at what
Yeah.
Satoshi did, which is probably the most altruistic thing anyone's ever done ever, he's the richest man in the world, right? Like Jeff Bezos is a pussy. Like he doesn't own anything compared to what Satoshi would have, but he's opted to just gift that to the network and say hands off sort of thing. So you can extrapolate that out for anyone who's got BTC and then just decides, nah, I'm out. He actually give that value to the rest of the network. It's really interesting to think about, but it's if you think of it in terms of like a percentage of like a pie sort of thing, it's a massive chunk that he had.
Yeah, huge.
And there's only X amount left. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Because I read a thing years ago that even when Bitcoin was at $10,000 for a single Bitcoin, the guy Satoshi had like how many, a million of the Bitcoins or something like that.
A mil. Yeah.
And his allocation that he gave himself when he first started it up, or him, her, whatever the entity is, would make the person richest in the world, right? So all the money in the world, he would have more than that, just even at the 10K mark of a Bitcoin.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a lot more than that at this given point. So yeah, quite interesting.
So when
literally the richest person in the world.
So when you say he gave it to the network, what do you mean, Kieran?
So he's basically taken that out. So say he jumped in.
So he's holding it. So it's the same as if it was lost. So
yes.
Yeah.
Bitcoin's
yes,
being lost
yep.
or someone hoarding them. The network knows no difference because they're still not being transacted
Circulated.
with.
If his Bitcoin's
Yeah.
moved, it would have massive effects on the network, but it never has. But I think
that's when you hear the term whales. That's
whales,
when
yeah. Exactly.
So you could say that he's artificially limiting the supply because he's not using it.
Yeah, I suppose you could say that. Yeah.
So similar to a bank buying back bonds, if you will.
No.
And holding the bonds instead of, and
similar, very similar, but it's
not doing the opposite. Selling bonds, I suppose, would be
yeah, that's right. But it's very precise. So anyone could, because it's a transparent ledger, anyone can authenticate that. With bonds, it's guesswork at best. Nobody knows, right? It's all cloak and dagger.
Oh, someone knows, but we don't.
Somebody somewhere might know.
Well, they have to know. There's ledgers. There's ledgers. Of course.
There's ledgers somewhere.
Yeah.
Up there.
They're in the room downstairs next to the dark closet in
Knox. Fort Knox. It's empty.
So just back to KYC. One thing that made me think about it, like KYC, part of that's also around like fraud protection, around lending and loaning and whatnot. Bitcoin, if you don't have enough of something, what happens? Any way to get money or any way to get more coins or Satoshis for
like
buying something that you can't yet get?
Yeah. So there's already mechanisms for that now. So if you look at like BlockFi, Celsius, there's a bunch of others we can actually borrow against. In fact, MicroStrategy, that's what Saylor's actually doing. So he's never going to sell any of his crypto. He borrows against it. So he has, but it's essentially debt against his BTC. But anyone can do that now. So like BlockFi, you can sign up today, sign up for an account, say I need X amount, borrow against this, and it's very specific. You have X amount to say Tether or whatever other crypto that you want. You can even get USD if you want. I think you can even get AUD with some of them now. And then you just have to pay it back against that. So yeah, 100%.
Against what?
So you're talking
crypto?
fiat. No, you're saying against your crypto, you're getting fiat.
Fiat or crypto or Tether.
So if it's all crypto, then wouldn't there be a know your customer sort of thing going on somewhere to make sure, one, it's going to you, and two, you can send it back and you're the one sending it back?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Wouldn't it just be whatever, like what? It sounds a bit like staking, doesn't it?
Similar. Yeah, very similar.
Kind of similar.
I
Because I
think
would
that
say, if you weren't able to pay back what you borrowed, whatever you've, for lack of a better of a term, staked or have lended against, would then just come out of that. Wouldn't it?
think of it as centralized staking. So they basically just take it if you can't pay it back. So
It's now ours.
Yeah, it's mine now. Yeah, exactly.
It's mine now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's
It's like going to cashies. It's like going to cashies. It is. That's the
Cash
simple way to
converters,
do it. Cash
Yeah, but
converters.
that's
Yeah. I've got this. I've got this laptop and this Xbox, and I need $300 for my nan.
Yeah. She's having heart surgery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sure. Here you go. Never comes back.
So-
Thanks. We'll keep the laptop and the Xbox.
Yeah.
So let's pretend you wanted to buy a house. All
Oh
right.
yeah, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Let's just do an example. Right? I'll just do a house, and it was the equivalent of 100 Bitcoins, whatever that is, Satoshis, whatever. And you had, I don't know, 25 Bitcoins in your account. You'd put the house up against it for the 75 remaining Bitcoins you need.
To buy the house.
Yeah.
So you literally put
So it's exactly the same as fiat, except you're using Bitcoin.
for that sort of stuff. Yeah, totally. Just I suppose different. And I'm guessing
Different for
the
one
banks are gonna
important
get
reason.
Yeah,
Huge important reason. It's not going to be causing inflation.
was that, and I'm guessing the banks are getting into it as well. But it's basically companies have jumped in, so like Abra, BlockFi, Celsius,
Cadabra?
Abracadabra, yeah. To do that instead of a bank.
Abracadabra.
But yeah, that's the main difference, I suppose. It's just companies doing it before banks, and the banks will probably catch up with that, or become irrelevant like Kodak, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, every time a loan gets put out or anything, it's just contributing to, inflation. It's devaluing the fiat money that's in circulation. Whereas when you do it with a crypto, because crypto is de-inflationary, it sort of
Deflationary, yeah.
yeah.
But it's not even deflationary either. I listened to a thing on that recently. So that's the wrong terminology as well. Like we don't have terminology for what it is.
I'm just going by what it.
But
it is.
legacy stuff. It's so weird. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So this is another one. Welcome to Clown World. Janet Yellen says the pandemic. So she is or she was. God, what's her role? Someone got Google. Can you look it up? What her actual title is?
Who? What's her name? Hold on.
Janet Yellen.
1 N or 2?
1 N.
Double L-E-N, yeah.
Anyway, so she says that the pandemic is responsible for inflation.
Quite convenient.
Yeah. Of course it is. What else would it be?
Yeah, I agreed. I was like, yeah, well.
Oh, she's
else?
Secretary of the Treasury.
There you go. Yeah.
Or she was.
She was, yeah. So I think she's retired, maybe. I don't know. She looks like she should be retired.
Yeah. Oh no, she's in there. She's in there. Assumed it's 26th of Jan 2021.
Oh, she's still there. Okay.
Still
Wonderful.
kicking.
Wonderful. Anyway, I thought that was hilarious, and I completely agree with everything that she said. I thought it was like, oh, of course, well, the pandemic, that's inflation. Yeah,
Well, it's one, but not the only. I can speak specifically to some instances where the Suez Canal thing, it fucked up the shipping of goods around the world, and therefore increased the cost of shipping later with what was available. Some areas it's up 500%. that's going to go onto the cost of goods that are being shipped.
But was
Inflates
that
the cost of those
how?
goods?
But how is that the pandemic?
No, that wasn't the pandemic. I'm saying.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I'm saying
Yeah.
there are other factors, 100%, but it definitely
Oh.
had some influence on things, of course.
Always.
It restricted movement, changed supply and demand characteristics, changed the norm in some areas by the measures used, let's say.
So
And in some instances by the fact that there are less people in areas doing certain things, because some people did die. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Brazil out of that, actually, with such large numbers of deaths.
So apparently, not sure if these figures are right, but for the last 2 years, 40% of America's money, so the USD, has been printed within the last 2 years. I probably reckon that has more to do with the inflation numbers rather than
Just maybe.
maybe.
Like the $65
Maybe I've been
trillion.
silly.
I mean, $65 trillion COVID help bailout that happened last year in the US.
Oh,
You know, maybe a little bit
maybe.
might contribute to it.
Yeah, how much?
Yeah,
I
it's a
don't know.
possibility. Wow, $65 trillion much. That is a hell of a lot of bailout help people because our nation cares money.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts, Tony?
Well, it's hard to say, mate. I reiterate Louis' point, the whole concept of money, and obviously money is at sort of the core of everything we do, life, I guess. But yeah, I think it's all bullshit. It's very convenient that COVID-19 inflation. Yeah, it all makes sense, and I can see how they can justify it, right? Businesses stopped because of this COVID thing, and you know, the government needs to print more money to inject into businesses and pay for vaccines and all this other stuff.
It's coming from a place of love. That's basically what they're trying to say in a way. Like we're caring for our civilians. We're caring for our communities. We're doing this, and a byproduct of that, unfortunately, is inflation. So we're caring for you. At the same time, we're fucking you too, because all this money that's helping you to be able to continue your business and buy the things that you need or want. Well, that's also contributing to you now are going to have to spend more than what you did 2-3 years ago because of the 6-7%, 8% ongoing of inflation. So double-edged sword there, I think, definitely.
Can we all agree that she's a beautiful woman?
Well, yeah, I'd date it.
Well,
I can see you as starstruck, Tony.
I'm bewildered, mate, just by from fucking a fucking dumb and dumber haircut, you know, just like a fucking just put a pot on your head and just cut around. You pumpkin pie haircutted freak.
Nice. All right, well that's probably it for that. Unless you had something else, Don. Sorry.
No, I have no idea what the level of all that would mean. I'm not an economist.
No worries.
Simple as that.
Probably skip that one. Let's get the next one. Taproot was pretty cool. I don't know, it might be sort of above everyone, but basically that got implemented last week. It basically means more obfuscates transactions, so it's like more security that you can build into wallets. I don't know if you knew anything about that, Tony, or have heard about Taproot or the encryption methods around that. No,
I haven't.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we can save that for another one. We can do some more research on it.
Just quickly, just back to the point we were making before then, is that required because there is no know your customer thing, and that fraud can happen on your wallet? You know, it can be taken, and then what you own is not, you don't own anymore, and you've got no mechanism to get it back.
So Taproot, you mean, or?
Well, Taproot, from the point of it's a form of encryption or safeguarding what is in your wallet.
Yep.
So that means at the minute that there must be a way that people can get into someone's wallet and take stuff. And
it's-
because you're not a KYC, you have limited means to get your stolen goods back.
zero recourse. So if someone's hacked you, that's it. That's
I think if you're hacked, you're hacked, whether there's
You're hacked,
KYC
you're
or not. Doesn't matter. You're done.
Well, no, if someone uses your credit card, let's say, with a normal bank,
Mm-hmm.
it gets cut off.
Yep.
You don't lose
Yeah,
out.
that's true. Well, yeah, I
It's
guess.
not you.
Yeah,
It's fraud. Yeah, I'm just trying to bring it around a little bit.
it is fraud. That's true. It is fraud.
I think the main difference between like something like Visa and an open network like the Bitcoin network or a layer 2 on top of that, like the Lightning network, it's not just speed, so it's actually quicker as opposed to what people might think. So like when you do a Visa transaction, when you like tap and go and you're like, yeah, it's instant. It actually takes a week for that to clear because of what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it does.
So it's very, very slow and inefficient, and there's a lot of fraud behind that. With a Lightning transaction,
it's fraud behind it or fraud protection behind it?
No, fraud throughout the whole network. So it's built on fraud, right? So
protection takes a week to make a determination if it's fraudulent or not. But by that time, the junkies bought 2 ice lattes.
So it's just rife. It's rife with fraud and nonsense throughout the whole network. It's just kind of like it's like a facade. Kind of looks pretty, and it's kind of quick because I tapped and I got my coffee, but it's not really quick because it takes a long time to do all the rest of it, and then the crooks have whatever they need. With the Lightning network, it's layer 2 on top of BTC. It happens immediately, gets settled on the BTC blockchain in basically like in clusters sort of thing. But there can't be fraud. So basically, you can have someone steal your wallet and whatever, but it comes back to the individual, not to a third party looking after you, if that kind of makes sense. So I think it's better much better in the long run.
Yeah, less reliance on
third parties.
Well, third parties, yeah. It's like going back to what was it? The sovereign. What was that book?
Sovereign individual. Yeah.
Sovereign individual. Yeah.
Yep.
And that can tie into a lot of other things. That can survival of the fittest, keep going, and all that kind of stuff.
So there's no difference. Well, what's the difference between a Bitcoin wallet and a physical wallet with cash in it?
So a physical wallet with cash in it is, depending on your country, is backed by nothing. So historically, it was backed
from
by
the point of from fraud. I'm talking about
fraud specifically.
So a physical wallet can be just taken or lost, and without any kind of security, right?
Yeah.
If you lose your wallet, someone can steal it from you.
So there's layers of security you can do with BTC and with cryptocurrency. So for one example, which is probably the best thing you can do, is something called multi-sig. So say you and me, Don, had a wallet together. You live on the other side of the world, and we could actually do one between all 4 of us and go, all right, so we want to do a transaction. All of us have to turn our keys in order for that transaction to go. So if one of us loses a hardware wallet, whatever it is, a ledger, doesn't matter because you can't actually get access to those. You can't do that with a wallet with some cash in it. Even though
you need your keys no matter what. Even if we lose our ledgers now, it doesn't really matter. We just get another ledger, put our keys in, bang,
boom. Yeah,
was tweet.
Yeah. But the multi, so that's one aspect, and then the multi-sig is another aspect on top of that. So it's pretty well thought out in terms of like how secure you can make it.
And that's basic security. That's just built-in standard from the start security. That's just very
layer 1. Yeah.
Layer 1, exactly.
So a multi-sig's similar to some business accounts that need 2 authorizations for a transaction to happen.
Yep.
Same principle.
Yep.
Sort of.
Yep.
Yeah, sort of.
You
same
can do
kind of principle.
You can do like 2 of 5 or 2 of 8 or however many you want. So for the 4 of us, we could do, you need
3 or 4.
3 or 4, yeah. And and it doesn't matter. So, and yet the cool thing is the network doesn't care where you are. So like for something like a business or like say Macquarie Bank does something kind of akin to that, where you can have 2 people, 3 people that have to authorize transactions. But you have to be in Australia and you have to have accounts from Macquarie, and there's these third-party nonsense you have to deal with the BTC network. We just spin it up. Boom, here's your key. Go wherever you want. You can go to China. I'll go to.
But they're just looking
Wherever.
after you, Kieran. That's all. They're just looking after you. That's all.
Yeah,
Because we all
people.
need to be looked after.
You couldn't use that for day-to-day transactions, really, though, could you? It'd be impractical. Like if you want to go buy a coffee,
Yeah, so that's where
with
the
it,
Lightning Network
it's
comes in.
impractical.
Yep. So that's why you'd have layer 2 solutions for that sort of stuff. So we're talking about layer 1 security. Layer 2 is like functionality on top of that. So it's like Lightning, Liquid, that sort of stuff. But that's it's all still I think still early days, but it's really robust and more so than I thought it would be by now. So it's happening quicker than anyone sort of anticipated.
Well, all this interest in it in the last 5 years is driving it.
Yeah, it's huge. Actually, I think we spoke about this already. This is Snowden's tweet just recently saying that the willpower of Satoshi to actually keep those coins that he had initially, like Jesus, I don't think any of us know anyone that has that sort of willpower. So potentially he's dead. Who knows? But yeah, pretty cool. So the other one I wanted to do was actually that's a good podcast if you have time to listen to. They go way over time, but Saylor really hammers home like the whole journey that he went on for MicroStrategy and building out their because there was no one had done it before, so there was no blueprint, so they kind of had to carve it out on their own. So worth listening to. We don't have to get into it. Maybe next time if you guys have a chance, have a listen to it. Skip that one. The one there she is again. Actually, this is funny. This is from a couple of years ago when 10K. There you go, Tony. The guy in the background held up this buy Bitcoin sign. Trying to yell it.
That's awesome.
That's what it would be today. So
Much
like a few days ago. Yeah.
And all these other pompous guys around them, you know what I mean? What's this Bitcoins?
Yeah, it's very funny. The one I wanted to talk about to finish up was this one. This is really cool. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. I think someone drew this up and they've done a few different renditions of it. But essentially, and Saylor really crystallizes this on a podcast recently. In fact, it might even be that one on the Pomp podcast. He sort of goes into it. But basically, all these things here, so whether it's land, real estate, gold, oil, equities, whatever, the outgoings for securing those are just exponentially just goes up. So say you have, so for example, say like gold is a good one, but say the four of us went to go and buy a really expensive painting that, you know, no one else could afford. We're like, all right, we're going to put into this. Where are we going to keep it? You have to think about security. Where are you going to, like the housing for it? Like
insurance,
all the shit that goes
keeping
into
it in the, exactly. Yeah. Keeping it all well and proper. So, you know,
exactly.
My precious.
Yeah. Oil, the same thing. So like, how do you distribute it? Where do you keep it? All the energy that goes into that is just insane. Land, real estate. Like I just got my bloody rates yesterday. Like, what the hell? What is it? I'm thinking
What's this bullshit?
Yeah, I was thinking of sending it back saying no thanks.
That's fine.
Yeah, no
we'll
thanks,
dump
assholes.
our own rubbish.
Yeah. So real estate, land, and then gold. Like how the hell do you protect gold? You have to keep it in a bloody vault and have security. So everything below that line, BTC, you don't need any of that. And the beauty of that is the more you use it and the more people use it, the more secure it gets, because the more miners there are, it infinitely gets more and more secure the more people are actually on the network. So I thought that'd be a good talking point. What do you reckon, Don?
No, that's definitely a good one. Very good one.
Well, I'm just going to use oil as an example. Nothing's going to change there. Oil's still required. It's used in so much crap, it's not funny. Coca-Cola, for God's sake.
Really? Oh Jesus.
The caffeine or whatever. Caffeine. It's
Yeah,
a
okay.
carbon, something to do with a carbon derivative out of crude oil or something or other.
Oh,
I was listening
nasty.
to
That'd be
the
good
guy
for
that was a guy on Rogan that was gibbering on about that stuff, along with a whole heap of other things.
That's a horror.
Um,
The horror.
so that's still going to have some sort of
Utility.
military crap going on.
Yep.
Like it's still going to be important where it is. People are going to want to control it.
For sure.
I know, but I think you're
etc.
missing the point, though. He's
Yeah.
not talking about that. It won't. That these things won't be important. It's that the upkeep in keeping these will cost you money over the years, whereas there is no upkeep in keeping BTC over the years as a store of value.
Yeah, but
Whereas the
someone's
store-
going to have to pay the upkeep. Is all I'm saying. It doesn't
Of what?
disappear. Of oil. Someone still has to mine,
Yeah.
drill it. Someone has to transport it. Someone has to process it. Someone has to store the processed parts. Someone then has to process the processed parts, store the parts that are made from it.
Won't disappear, but the point is all those things cost human lives. So literally like war, all the like war for oil, war,
Still
war
be
for
there.
gold, land, all the rest of it. Yeah,
Won't change.
yeah, but just for a person to have what's the wording? To be I can't think of the word, but basically to be happy with what you've invested in, all those things hurt people all the time, and they cost a lot of money over time and cost a lot of upkeep. BTC doesn't. So logically, for anyone, so like the good example Sailor gave recently was like, okay, I've got $2 billion. Do I go and buy a whole bunch of land out in the middle of fucking nowhere that maybe I can get a return on at some point? Kind of goes to your point earlier about the farmers. Or do I put that into BTC that I can keep in a 12-word seed phrase in my head and go anywhere in the world? Logically, for that person, for him
Yeah,
in
and
particular,
the land's going to cost money
shitloads.
yearly. It's up. Yeah, like I said, it comes with a lot more costs involved,
Yeah.
whereas the
But it's also
BTC
that-
doesn't.
And into
But
the
it's also
future, protection. So you have to buy a gun to protect the land that you own, supposedly. Like
Well,
it's
someone's
also-
going to buy the gun to protect the land that has the oil on it because consumers want the easiest thing, which is something made from crude oil. Back to Tony's point before, he said something like, what was it? The people like the convenience.
right,
So if the
convenience
parts are
stores.
made, if the convenient item or the convenient thing to drive their cars made from oil, then it still needs to be owned. The land needs to be there. Someone's still going to have a gun. It's just not you, but it wasn't you to begin with. You didn't own an oil field.
But what's more convenient, owning an oil field and protecting that with guns and everything, or remembering 12 words in your head?
They're not
Yeah,
the opposite one another, not the same thing. Are you going to run your car on BTC
Yeah, well,
to go from point A to point B?
that's another podcast, but yes.
Yeah.
So
they're
that's
two
going to
different
be the
things.
energy to drive your car
Sure.
as it is now.
Sure, but I'm talking about the individual. So for a person, they've got a choice of two things, right? It's like
this is
like
a
this-
simple concept.
It is. I don't quite get why it's so hard to understand that they're not. It's this or this is what you're saying, and I'm saying it's not this or this. They both have to exist.
But for
No,
okay, so
yeah. No. He's not saying that they.
I would say one has to exist or
one
the other.
shouldn't exist. Yeah. It's not that. It's that. Okay, the wiser choice,
Incentive.
I think, would be to invest your $2 billion in Bitcoin, because over the next 10 years, you're not going to have to put any money into that
Security.
investment.
Yep.
Nothing at all.
Yeah.
Nothing. Zero. You've just put the $2 billion in. Whereas if you bought $2 billion worth of land or gold or oil or equities, you would have to be paying over the course of the next 10 years, possibly millions of dollars in securing your land, in rates of your land, in taxes of your land. And that goes with gold, oil, equities, the whole sort of thing. BTC won't have any of that.
So I'm not saying that
that's all it is.
those,
That's basically the gist of it.
yeah, so those things aren't going to disappear, Don. It's
Yeah,
just
no, not at all.
the incentives for individuals is going to change. So like a billionaire is going to be like, well, what the fuck am I killing myself doing that
Mhm.
when I can just keep 12 words in my head? It's a no-brainer.
Why am I
right?
hiring 20 real estate agents and contractors to build and partition this land and develop it? And
All right,
It's
well, let's test that,
silly.
Cayman. What's
So at 10
off the top
years,
of the
you've still
dome?
got
Tell me
2
the 12
billion.
words.
No,
Nah.
but so at
From
the
a
end
memory
of
perspective,
10 years.
tell me how easy it is. Tell me straight
Yeah.
up.
Roger, Dodger, Bitcoin, aggregated, my node, password, login.
You can trust me. It's fine.
Yeah. Brain
So
wallets,
year
baby.
2021 and year 2031, you put 2 billion in, or whatever the equivalent is, you get the same out with the Bitcoin. Is it the same with the oil?
Get the same out. How would you get the same out?
Well, you're doing nothing with it. It's just sitting there.
Hang on.
2 billion of Satoshis, whatever it is, 20 Bitcoins, whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Okay, so the price of one BTC in 2011 was what?
No, but we weren't talking about fiat anymore. We're talking about Satoshis before. So it's worth exactly the same.
Okay, yes. it's
Nothing's
worth-
changed.
Oh, well, purchasing power changes,
The
right?
value of the Satoshis has changed.
Yeah.
So it's inflated.
Wrong word, but yeah, fine.
Yeah, it's
Well,
it's
the word
not-
inflation's been used a lot today, and it hasn't been used 100% correctly at
Correctly.
any point.
Yeah,
No
well,
one here fully
because-
understands inflation.
because nobody does, and there's so many different definitions of it, and same with deflation as well.
It's very complex.
Yeah, it's kind of a silly term, to be honest. But the purchasing power changes over time, right? So like with scarcity, people want what's scarce. So the most scarce item. So if you compare, like, say, gold is one of these points.
If it's
to-
still a useful thing.
Well, it's 100% useful. So that's not even a question anymore.
No, scarcity, because you can have things like Betamax is scarce now. Does anyone really want it? Does everyone want it? No, it's scarce though.
Yeah,
Scarce,
true.
So it's still got to have a
fungible.
requirement,
Yeah, scarce.
It needs
and
to be.
fungible.
It needs to have a necessity.
a use or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
an
yeah.
application, whatever you want to call it. It has to be
Totally.
desired.
Totally. So I mean, the world's biggest payment network is probably the best use case, but there's DIDs and everything getting built off that, but we're kind of getting away from the point. Like if you look at something like gold, which is on that list in terms of scarcity, like it's scarce, right? But it's actually infinite. Like there's infinite amount of gold out there, and no one can authenticate like what's what with that. You can authenticate the BTC blockchain years in advance to exactly how much is in circulation with precision. We've never had that before. And that's the difference. So that's the difference between any of the oil's the same, land to a certain degree, because it's like, how do you secure it?
But that's also a good point, right? That's the whole sort of the underpinning of inflation, right? There's some level of some number that we don't know, but there's only 10% of oil left in the world, so the price must go up. Well, it turns out there's fuckloads of it, but there's no tangible number that we can base it on. How many
No
barrels?
precision. Yep.
That's right, at all.
Yeah.
But once you know the number, well, then you can sort of do a bit more maths to it and actually start, sort of forecasting because you know what's there.
Exactly.
Yeah, to a degree, because then at the same time, if you're using those Satoshis as a means of exchange, then you're exchanging it for things that are infinite. So it's only one step, not away from infinite, I suppose.
Great.
There's infinite eggs, infinite apples.
Yeah. Well, that's totally true. But like the whole perspective around gold and oil is that it's finite, particularly gold and precious metals. It's like it's this finite thing that takes X amount of time to pull out of the ground. It's like, well, that's bullshit. It's everywhere, right? And like there's no telling, there could be an asteroid gets dumped onto the earth tomorrow, just filled with gold, which is going to make the price tank. You can't have that with a network like BTC. So
You're muted, Gasman.
yeah, I muted him.
Well, thank fuck for that.
Oh, did you? Yeah, I don't want to hear him crunch.
Correct.
All right. Well, I think that was a good first podcast, guys. I think that was awesome.
Yeah.
Props to everyone. I think we'll leave it at that, and then yeah, we'll do it monthly if we can. But everyone check out bitcoinaggregated.com and follow on with the RSS feed. We're gonna start posting stuff in the same sense that the BTC network sort of works. So like doing confirmations as to whether stuff's relevant or not. At the moment, I've just been posting stuff, but we're going to sort of work together and then potentially build out a Discord channel for other people to join as well. So yeah, this is awesome. Thanks heaps, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.